Hey everybody, John Schumacher here with NewWaveHealthcare.com, and just want to give you guys a quick reminder that we are a video podcast. So if you're listening to this on iTunes or Stitcher Radio, head over to NewWaveHealthcare.com to check out all of the video recordings of all of our interviews. We have over 45 now on all kinds of different topics in healthcare, entrepreneurship, marketing, innovation. So if you like video like me, go over there, check it out. We also link up all of our guests' contact information and all of the resources we mentioned during all of our interviews right there on the show notes page. So make sure to go over and check it out, newwavehealthcare.com. And let's get started. Today my guest is Sam Lomeli, who is the founder and host of Tips of the Scale. And Tips of the Scale is a podcast celebrating the weight loss success stories of real people from all over the world, some of their struggles, some of the challenges they went through. Sam really digs into these challenges with his guests on their weight loss journey. And he's built quite a following doing it. In fact, today, one of our topics, our main topic today with Sam is going to be how to content market and how to build an audience of raving fans that follow what you do. Because Sam's podcast is dang near coming up to 1 million downloads, which is a huge number for anybody who's in the podcasting community. And audio podcasting is content marketing. It is building an audience. So Sam has done that very well, and he's come on to share some of his knowledge today. So Sam, thanks so much for coming on. Let's just have you share a little bit about yourself personally. We'd like to get to know more about you, and then we'll jump into your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, thanks so much for having me on, John. It's an honor to be here and to spend some time with you and share what I know. So again, my name is Sam Lomeli. I have been an entrepreneur in and out doing different things over the course of my career. I fresh out of high school, I was I was the stereotypical guy who was taking apart a computer in his basement and that kind of thing. And so I delved into the entrepreneurial world there, and I loved it. Had to leave it behind when I went off to college, and I used it to get into the tech industry later on. And so that, while I was in school, I worked for Dell Computers in tech support, and so I somehow I found out that I was really good with the operational side of the business, and I started helping out management there, and I eventually joined the central operations team for a call center network, which I eventually took over. And so 2.5 years after I joined Dell, I was running the call center operations desk for their headquarters in Round Rock, and the network of call center agents at that time, at least, was over 2,000 agents in size, had 12 different call centers in 6 different countries, massive operation. I had no idea really the size of the operation I was running. When I look back, it was really I cut my teeth there in the business world, and so I got a real good education in operations and running large-scale organizations there. And so in the years after that, I grew with that career. I've run call centers for several major Fortune 500 companies, the defense sector, subcontractors of Department of Homeland Security, in the pharmaceutical space. So I've learned a lot about quite a few different industries, but my specialty has always been operations management. However, as you know, I have a personal weight loss story that has been something that shaped my own personal life and my personal character. When I was small, I was very overweight in elementary school, and it shaped a lot of what I dealt with growing up and the person that I became. And so when I lost that weight toward the end of high school, I've always carried a little baggage from the experience of growing up that way, and anyone who was an overweight child knows exactly what I'm talking about, from the clothing to the social awkwardness to the stuff with the other sex to just feeling comfortable in your own skin and being around other people. And so I had a lot of that kind of stuff left over from that experience. And in the years since then, one of the things that's fired me up really personally is when I talk to other people who have been through that same journey. It's been something that really fires me up, is to share my experience and to help them along. And so a year and 2 years ago now, in mid-2012, I separated from a company that I was with, and I had the opportunity to look at doing something else with the rest of my life. And so we were expecting the birth of my first son at the time, and I thought really long and hard, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, John, and the story, but I thought about the legacy I wanted to leave behind for my son, and the way that I didn't want to have regrets later in life about all the things that I was really passionate about, and I wanted him to learn from my experience, whether I quote-unquote succeeded or didn't, that I chased what I was passionate about. And so took a leap. I had the blessing of my partner and jumped right in. And so that's when, I started looking into doing something in the health and fitness world and healthcare. And so because I'd had that personal journey through my own weight loss twice in life, actually, when I was in high school, as I mentioned, lost about 55 pounds then, and then later, after divorce in my late 20s, I lost another 55 pounds I had gained over the course of that whole tumultuous thing. And so I had done this twice. I had done a ton of research. I'd known a lot of people and made a lot of contacts in the industry. And so when I thought about what I was extremely passionate about, this is what it all came back down to. And I'm a big believer in helping other people. Total humanist. I'm just all about helping my community and helping the people around me. I've been an active volunteer in the community here in Dallas and in Central Texas for a long time. And so I, as an active, very enthusiastic consumer podcast myself, for some reason it never clicked, and then at some point in early 2013, it did. That I had this passion I had for helping people, the passion I had for my personal weight loss story, and then how much I was enjoying consuming podcasts this way, all married together, just was the perfect recipe for how I could affect some change and really help other people. And so I've known quite a bit of personal trainers, and I have tremendous respect for them and for working with other people. But my operational mindset wouldn't let me go down that route because I felt like I would be spending too much time one-on-one with people. Mm-hmm. And so as someone who's run, I've had organizations of 200-300 people, my specialty is getting results through layers. And so I wanted to set up a way where I could exponentially help people. And again, the podcast just was the perfect medium to do that. And so I started having conversations with people probably about this time last year in the summer of 2013 with people here in my local community in Dallas, asking them what struggles they were having with their own weight loss. And this was a really just organic, like bootstrappy thing. I threw some ads on Craigslist, said if you're overweight and you want to talk about it, let me buy you lunch. Just talk to me about it. Be completely honest. You'll be completely anonymous. It'll be all confidential. And so I had about a dozen of these. I talked to real people face to face. Half the time when we sat down and started talking, we never even had lunch. We just talked the whole time. They poured their hearts out to me. And when we discussed their struggles and I shared my story, I started seeing consistencies in the questions they were asking and the struggles they were having. And so those points became the template for my show. That's where I got the questions that I ask my guests that drive kind of the direction I take in my interviews. And so just this morning I released episode 105, so I am now on the other side of 105 episodes. Many of them are success stories. Actually, the majority of them are, but I've also interviewed some experts in the fields of genetics, obviously nutrition, dietitians, physicians, habit change experts. James Clear, I'm a huge fan of the work he does, and I was privileged honored to interview him. Gave us some fantastic advice and tips in that world. But I've talked to these just remarkable individuals from all over the world, just regular moms, dads, brothers, sisters, people with jobs and families and commitments and the same 24 hours in their day that all of us have, sharing how they've lost tons of weight. And I'm talking people who've lost from 30, 40 pounds to, in some cases, over 300, 400 pounds, like life-changing amounts of weight. And I am super fulfilled by every single one of these interviews that I do, and I share that with my audience, and I hope that shines through. And yeah, to this day, I mean, we're coming up on, we're about 3.5 weeks away now from our 1-year anniversary. On September 9th of 2014, I'll celebrate exactly a year since our launch. And I'm not sure how we're going to celebrate that, but I know that I've put a challenge out to my audience, as you mentioned, to help me hit 1 million downloads. By that point, we're currently at about 780,000. So this will be a big stretch for our last month, but I believe I can do it. So that's what we're up to right now.
Perfect. Well said. And obviously your passion comes through when you talk about your project. It came from a personal experience twice. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, so it obviously is very personal to you, and I could tell that you come off in a very authentic way when you discuss it, and it comes through pretty clearly, I think, for your audience as well. And it also, to your point, you made a great point that you went out and before you started the project, you actually interviewed your target audience, your target market. And I think a lot of us, I know I've made this mistake a couple times, especially early on there, was to just, I have a great idea and I'm going to go out and do it right away. And the next day you walk out the door with your clicking your heels together, thinking you're a genius. And then you put something out, you spend a lot of money and a lot of time, and yet all of a sudden no one wants to hear it. So you did a smart thing, which is ask your people what they want to hear and then create your content, your outline, and everything else from what they want to hear. Seems simple enough, but man, I did not know that until like even recently. I started implementing that a lot more, and it makes all the difference, right? It's a little bit easier to reach people if you just
Really,
take that one step. So
it's a tough lesson to learn too. Like I had to go down the wrong road a couple of times, and just like you said, because I think any entrepreneur has probably gone down that road. Hopefully less times than more, but some of us it takes a dozen, where you pour a lot of energy, a lot of time building this thing that looked perfectly in your mind, and you've gone so far down that road before you realize people really wanted you to go down the other road. And you know, one of the things that helped me with that, I think I was fortunate about, is in the operations world, I learned really quickly that with a massive network of employees and peers and people helping me out, I was never going to be, and in fact many times I was the total opposite, I was never going to be the smartest person in the room. So I relied on input from everyone around me. You know, I had teams of sometimes 13, 14 supervisors who worked for me, and I relied on all of them to you know, work together as kind of a hive mind and come up with what the best idea was, the best course of action was, and we'd all filter through like the pros and cons of each. So in this case, I knew I wasn't going to have all the answers for the right questions to ask, and exactly where and what direction the show was going to go. And so I could only get that from the ideal listener. And so, like you said, I reached out to them directly, and that's I think one of the smartest things that I did. I'm very glad that I did in hindsight.
yeah, you're wise beyond your time there. That was a smart move. So if you have an email list, you guys, everybody listening, if you have an email list or Facebook following or whatever, talk to those people. You know, give them something in value in return, either like maybe a quick phone call or something, and make sure that you understand clearly what their needs are, because it's going to make it all the difference in the world for you. Yeah. So as you've obviously come a long ways. It's almost been a year. You're reaching a major milestone here in the podcasting community. Can you maybe, but it wasn't always that way, so can you take us back and kind of walk us through the journey that you went through from beginning to present time? Because podcasting is content marketing and content creation. It's just audio instead of text or video. You know, it's putting it out there. You know, your words, you speak the content, but it's still content marketing, and that content still needs to reach these people. So obviously you started with 0 people when you first launched, and then you come up to nearly 1 million downloads here in the next month or so. That's a pretty incredible journey. So you obviously did something right. So can you take our audience down to the beginning stages of this? And I know you talked about after you've interviewed some of these people and you said, yes, now I have an idea of what to talk about. What did you do then?
Well, I made a conscious decision to not go out and listen to other people who are doing this. Because there were already other people who were interviewing weight loss stories, and people who, you know, the Jillian Michaels of the world, the Mike Dolces, the people who have well-known credentials and backgrounds, and they have celebrity followings already. So they have kind of a built-in audience for their podcasts and their shows and things like that. And so I don't come from that world, and I didn't have, you know, a built-in following. I didn't have credentials. To this day, I'm not a nutritionist, a personal trainer, or dietitian, anything like that. I just have my personal story and this now mass body of knowledge that I've gained from everybody that I've interviewed and all these data points. And so one of the first things that I needed to do was figure out how I was going to get myself out there. And I know that I have had the imposter syndrome for a long time. You know,
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask, did you feel like a total imposter without your credentials?
That was a big, and still to this day sometimes it bugs me. And, you know, you and I are members of some of the same circles of podcasters and people that we associate with, and one of the things that I hear commonly is, you know, even if there are a dozen other people doing what you're doing, no one else has your voice, no one else has your unique perspective, has gone through your story, has your experiences. And I think that's part of the magic of the stories that I hear in these interviews, is no two of them are alike. Even if they are both people who lost weight using solution XYZ, the way that they got there and how it affected their life is very, very different. And so I knew that already from what I was hearing in these personal interviews, so I knew that, to get myself out there, I had to not compare myself to other people who were doing it. And so, again, I made that conscious effort to, like, I deleted every health and fitness and weight loss podcast from my phone, from my computer. I didn't want to hear any other noise, so that, number one, it wouldn't bother, it wouldn't keep me up at night with my own self-doubts about how I measured up against these other people. And two, so that I kept my own voice and my approach as pure to me as possible, just as authentic as I could keep it. I wanted to know that, in 6 months, in a year, whatever happened with this podcast and with this project, this leap of faith of mine, that I had given it 100%. It was 100% me. It wasn't me copying someone else's template or the steps that they took. I clearly, you and I have learned from a lot of the same people how to enter certain parts of the podcasting world, and so I've took strategies from people, but I wanted my voice and my path and the way that I built this show to be all my own. And so, I consciously made sure I didn't let those negative voices in, because I had plenty of them already come in from my own self-doubts. And like we've talked about this, the imposter syndrome, I made sure that when I interviewed people who had been through these journeys, that I made everyone feel like their voice mattered. That John in Mississippi, to Les in Maine, to Tim in California, to Adina in Toronto, everyone I interviewed that I spoke to, I didn't want them to feel like, because they weren't a nutritionist or a dietitian or any of that, just the same doubts that I had, that their story wasn't valid. Like, the complete opposite. Like, they had proven it through their action and through everything that they had done in their own life. So, making them the star of this and making them feel how important it was for other people to hear their story, just charged me up. When I got to hear how much it helped them to share their story, and then I started getting feedback from listeners who really resonated with everything that my guests were sharing, I knew I was on the right track. And so I think that's the first part of how I got started. More to your point, was, I invested heavily in Facebook ads when I first launched. I tried to build up an email list early too, and that is admittedly somewhere I'm not really probably where other people would say I should be by this point. My email list and my list there is roughly 300 people. A year in, almost at this point between 10 and 15,000 listeners per episode, and my email list is about 300 people. I don't lose any sleep at night over that, though, because I don't have anything to sell, so I don't reach out by email to say, here's my newest product or the newest thing that I'm pitching. When I reach out by email, it's to say, I saw your comment on the blog. I was really excited to hear you say this has been what's going on with you. Let's chat about that. And so it's all about that personal connection and those relationships. And I know we'll talk about monetizing here a little bit later, but I've made really sure and purposely left that as the last part of this whole cycle for me, so that I built it on a foundation of being 100% authentic and connecting with people at an emotional level, and providing something that I think is making a difference.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And it's obvious that you're coming from a place of them first, and you care about them first, which is going to come across very authentically to that audience. So I think you touched on several good points there. I think the first one I would like to regurgitate, I guess, if you will. Sounds kind of bad, but I'm going to regurgitate it here. Is that you didn't shy away from a competitive niche. Weight loss is a very competitive market. Very competitive. Probably one of the top, to monetize as well. So, but yeah, you weren't afraid of those people that were doing it already. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. And I know I've been guilty of this. Is they tend to shy away from, someone's already doing that. Well, I can't do that. I need to come up with something different. And I think we hear it all the time that you have to niche until it hurts, niche until it hurts. That's true, but I think it could be scary advice too, because if there's no market for what you're doing, it doesn't matter, right? You could come up with some crazy little thing and it's your own niche that you're the best in the world at, but if no one knows about it or no one wants anything from that niche, it's not going to work out for you, especially from a business standpoint. So, niching till it hurts, I think, is good advice for some things, but I think it depends on what you do. Like if you're a consultant or a coach, people are going to, like you said, resonate with you and your message and your style and the way you interact with them. Even if you're in a competitive niche, there's still going to be people who want to work with you. Yeah. So if your goal is so many people here are consultants or listening to this, just don't be afraid of that niche. Go out there, be yourself, give a lot of value everywhere you go, and people are going to want to work with you. You know, so I think that was an excellent point that you made during your talk there. You also touched on Facebook advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know how to do that? Did you hire somebody to do that? What was some of your strategies there?
I didn't know anything about it. To this day, I'm probably not, I'm nowhere near the most well-versed on it. But I tapped into some of the, I think, some of the smartest minds on the subject. I listened to a lot of Amy Porterfield and Michael Steisner and people who are very well-versed on social media marketing. So I learned a lot of tactics from them. So I invested in the 6 weeks prior to the podcast launch to get, for one, my brand in front of people, for them to see the logo, to see this is weight loss motivation, it's inspiration, it's real stories from real people. And that's all, I mean, that's all I had at that point. I didn't have images or interviews to share with them yet. So I was building really, really slowly this list of people on Facebook who were becoming fans of the page, and I was dripping content to the Facebook page, letting them know that this launch was coming. And so these are people who, you know, to this day, I'm very thankful that they took a chance and they hit like for this page they had never heard of before, and they didn't know what I was offering. They were just tuning in to see what was coming next. But I'm glad that I did, because those people who were ready for day one when I launched, you know, instead of launching to a crowd of crickets, you know, I had on my first day 24 downloads, which doesn't maybe sound like a lot, but the second day was 150, the third day was 300.
Wow,
and so it was very quickly, yeah, from very quick, right off the bat, you know, people knew that I had said this is what I was going to deliver, and I delivered on the day that I said I would, and I delivered what I said I would. And then from that day to now, this is something else I wanted to mention today, I have been consistent.
Yeah.
I said I would deliver every week, and I actually dialed back the frequency of shows at one point. I went from 3 days a week to 2. Very conscious decision. I did it very carefully, and at a specific time. We can get into that if you want, but I promised that I would deliver episodes every week, and it's been, you know, it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. When I dialed it back, it went to Monday, Friday, and I have never missed a week except for one, and it was in Thanksgiving month of last year, and that was with advance notice on Facebook and on Twitter, and I let everyone know ahead of time. But with the exception of that week, I have consistently delivered every single week, as I promised to my audience since that very first day. Every Monday, every Friday, they knew what they could expect on their iPhone, on their, you know, in iTunes. They knew that they would have me and a guest in their ears to give them the motivation they needed to continue on their journey. And I've followed through on that commitment. It hasn't always been easy. We've been on, you know, a couple of family trips and things where I've been up until 3, 4 in the morning at, you know, a relative's house, typing away, doing some last minute editing and stuff, and uploading on a horrible connection or on the side of the road in some cases. I mean, it's been crazy, but I have had this this commitment that I made, and I know that being on the other side of it, I would feel let down if someone didn't follow through on their commitment, even if I had never met them in person, right? Because they said they would. So for me, I felt this obligation to follow through, and it was something I held myself accountable for. And so there have been many nights over the past year that I have been up all night long editing, you know, putting in just massive hours. And I've worked way harder on this than I ever did for any other company in corporate America. And I've stayed up to do whatever it took to get that episode out in time, so that when my audience tuned in that morning, that Monday or Friday morning, they had exactly what I had promised that I would deliver to them.
Wow. Well, obviously you have passion for this, and you've been consistent, and your integrity is obviously in check there. So I think that's another reason why people are magnetized to what you're doing, and you know, your mission is you don't let them down. You're consistent, and that's, you know, one thing I'd like to put out there again to the audience and remind them is, yeah, you got to be consistent as a content producer, whether that's a blogger, whether that's an audio podcaster, a video producer. Whatever your mode is to share your story with the world, you got to do it consistently. People need to know that they can count on you to be there in the long run. You can't just be here today, gone tomorrow. And I think that's one of the reasons why it takes a while for people to vibe with you sometimes. Some people, is that they need to know that you're real, right? There's so many people coming and going in this world, and, you know, the entrepreneurial ADD is ever present, and it's so easy to want to veer left or a little further than you should, but you've obviously done a good job of keeping focused and dialed in on what you're doing, and it's obviously paid off. I think you also talked about having a pre-launch strategy, right? I mean, so did you, for everybody who's listening to this, if you're going to start, either create a new product, or an online course, launch a podcast like Sam has done, you got to get people pre-tuned to it. You don't just open the gate and say, "Here I am," because then you're going to really hear the crickets even louder then. So you got to do some kind of pre-launch to get people primed up for what you're going to be releasing soon. So did you obviously did that on your Facebook page? Is that what you were doing with the Facebook ads? You were getting people to your Facebook page and liking your page? Is that what you were doing, paying for likes?
Yes. I knew that, at least at the time, before some of the more recent changes Facebook has made. At the time, I knew that if they liked the page, that they would see the interviews that I would post once the page went active and I started being regular with the content. And so I wanted to make sure that, again, I wasn't launching to a field of crickets. And so, as long as there were a handful of people there who were engaged enough to like the page and to follow it and see the first couple of episodes, I knew that I could tap them for feedback. Tell me that if they were liking what they were hearing, if I needed to make adjustments to audio, to the intro, to anything. And this is a piece of advice I just gave to someone recently, that I'm glad I somehow landed on at the time. Is that in my own performance, when I listened back to the first couple of episodes, I had 1,000 things that didn't go the way I wanted them to, and I did endless editing to fix the way I sounded and the way my guests sounded and to make everything sound perfect. And I see you laughing because any podcaster has been down this road. Anyone, I think, in the creative field is extremely hard on themselves for what the final product looks like. And I compare this to like a wedding day for someone. Like, only the bride and groom know exactly how everything was supposed to go, but the guests can have had the time of their life, even if the bride and groom are like, "Oh my God, these 50 things just completely they didn't work out, they didn't happen," and everyone else is completely oblivious to this because they didn't have the same expectation. And so I look at it the same way now, that I could have been really hard on myself for the 100 things I was doing wrong every episode. And it took me a little while. It wasn't like overnight. It was a couple of months in before I stopped editing out when I said every 10 seconds, or if I like stuttered or repeated myself. It took me some time to get comfortable with sharing that, like those little imperfections. But I think that once I did, it helped my audience connect with me a little bit more. I was being just fully authentic. I was sharing my opinions on certain things, and I think we're going to get into this in a little bit here too. But it built a better connection between me and the audience to just put it out there. And so, all that to say, again, that I could have been a lot harder on myself for what I was doing at first, but I let my audience tell me what I needed to fix. I asked endlessly for feedback. I think the first 50 episodes all ended with me saying, "What did you like? What could I do different? What questions were you expecting to hear that I didn't ask?" And I didn't get a ton of feedback, but the feedback I got was priceless. It was your voice sounds too low. Raise the levels on yourself and lower your guests. And so I made that tweak, and then I went back and remastered episodes. I had people saying, your intro music is too loud. Little things like that. All the way to, "I'm glad you asked this question, and can you ask people this additional question?" And those started becoming parts of the template. And the interesting thing is, when I launched, I wanted to make sure that I shared the stories and got really, really in depth on the tactics, like what people were doing with their daily routine and how they were how they were losing the weight. But I wasn't married to that concept, and so over time, what I've seen emerge as the theme on the show is the mental health, the mental side of it, and how you have to be ready mentally and have committed inside before any attempt or any tactic you choose is going to work. There have been people who've lost weight through ketogenic diets, through crossfitting, through marathon running, just 100 different ways. And in one of the commonalities I have found is that in every case, the imperative, whatever event happened that triggered it, was different, but they made up their mind, and they had the will, they had the commitment, and they had the belief. And that third one, I think, is just super critical. They had to believe that this was going to be worth it, that this was going to be something they could do. And in a lot of cases, they got started before they even fully believed it. But it's that whole behave as if model, right? I think I've heard a couple of people say you start before you're ready. James Clear has written a ton of content about this concept. Is you start taking the steps or acting as if you fake it till you make it, essentially, right? And so I kind of did that when I launched, and I've heard so many success stories now start where people said I didn't completely believe it, but I started taking those steps and acting as if and faking it at first until it just turned into habit, and that's who they became. And I am just very proud of every one of my guests, and I think I've learned a lot from them in return from what they've shared with me.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge topic. I mean, I just love this topic, and I hear it all the time. Is you got to be okay being imperfect. You just have to be okay being imperfect. I talk to entrepreneurs and podcasters, content creators all the time, and it's like, I got to get this perfect, or they're scared of this or that, or like you said, you're taking out the ums in your conversations. I mean, that's just who you are, right? I mean, you just got to let it go raw. And yeah, I mean, there's some quality things you want to check. You don't want to just, if you're an audio podcaster in particular, you got to have good audio quality, right? You don't want to be like screechy or scratchy or anything, or people will turn it off. But I'm just saying, the majority of it is you just got to be okay being imperfect and just start taking action. You'll get better. I mean, I screw up all the time. I still screw up on these shows, and it's like, I don't really edit it much. I put it out there, and it's fine. People know you, and they see you, and they feel you, and that's the most important thing, is the content and the connection with your audience. It's not, having the most professional, audio bumper right before you start or something. I don't even have an audio bumper. I just lop on an intro for this, and that's it. And it's worked fine. People get to know me a lot better that way, and it works. So, what else here? Let's see. So you've talked a lot about the journey in the beginning, and obviously now you've had some success. So, what are some of the strategies you've used to grow your audience? Like, was it a steady climb to your lofty heights that you are now, or was it a spike? Was there a certain tactic that you used, or was it just putting good content out there and people sharing it, and over time it just kept growing?
I like that term, the lofty heights. It's not quite how I feel about where I am, but it's been. You hear my son. It's been a very gradual climb. The first month, again, I think that groundswell of audience that grassroots, I guess, building of an audience right off the bat, served me well, to where I got some feedback immediately and tweaked a couple of things about my approach right off the bat. First month had just short of 5,000 downloads. It was 4,916, if I remember right, first month in September of last year. And the second month was 16,000. And again, it was a lot about the frequency that I was putting them out at. And so there was a very gradual climb. I knew that just because of the nature of the health and fitness world, that in January I could expect a spike. I knew there would be everyone who was making their New Year's resolution, who was committing to a fresh start and all that. I knew that they were going to be looking for resources, and I wanted to be ready. And so I built up my bank of episodes to be ready for January. And I expected a spike, and I saw it. And so I saw this happen. Leading up to that, though, I knew that, Thanksgiving week, Christmas week, these are times people are not thinking about weight loss. And so I saw the decline, and that was actually when I made the decision to dial back from 3 episodes a week to 2. I knew it was the right time to do when people were less into the topic. So I did that over the holidays last year. And so January rolled around, I saw that spike. And inevitably, in about mid-March, that started to decline. The people who were just not keeping up with it, or who just fell out of liking the podcast, whatever reason, started to taper off. And so January saw a nice spike. In February and March started coming down, and a couple of interesting things happened there in that period. In February, the season finale of season 15 of The Biggest Loser happened. And it was a very controversial ending. I'm not sure if you know how this went down, but one of the winner of the show, of the season, lost more weight as a percentage of her body than anyone has ever lost in the show. When she was revealed, there was just a tremendous controversy over how emaciated she looked. And in a moment of just like being overwhelmed by what I saw on the show, I recorded a really quick, just these are my thoughts on the episode. This is how I feel about it, just completely uncensored. Like this is my, I had to get it out of my head, and this is how I feel about the show, and this is how I feel about what happened. And so I released that episode at middle to end of February. The feedback was was crazy. To this day, it's still like in the top 10 highest downloaded episodes, even though the next season I think is about to start. And so I learned a couple of things from that. One is that people were interested in what I personally had to say, not just the stories that my guests were sharing, and that was completely foreign concept to me. I was like, I'm the guy behind the mic. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And when I shared that was interesting. And so that got a couple of gears turning. 2, it also let me know that the raw, I guess, authenticity of just me just being open like that really touched people. And then 3, I also learned that controversial topics, like clearly there's a reason why they're on the cover of every magazine we see
Yep.
at the checkout line and stuff like that. A couple of those learnings I wanted to run with, and a couple I didn't. I don't want to be the shock jock, so I didn't go with like the controversial stuff. At least that's the way I've decided to approach that. However, I started opening up a lot more on my shows after that. And what I learned about the response from that was, I have probably more comments to that post about the Biggest Loser finale than almost any other episode I've released. And I respond to every single one. We had some really, really engaging dialogues and some really good conversations, and that back and forth just inspired me to open up and to take it to another level in terms of how much of myself I revealed on the show. I'd been really careful, John, up to this point to keep myself as just being the guy behind the mic and kind of stay, out of the picture and let my guests completely share their story without me kind of getting in the way. And after that point, I started to share a little bit more about myself. I talked about my background, and part of my passion for fitness also comes from, I haven't mentioned this today yet, but my dad, I lost my dad to cancer when I was 20 years old, to bone cancer. And that tremendously impacted me personally, and so that's another reason why health and fitness is a very important thing to me. And so when I was thinking about, kind of lost my train of thought there, I went off somewhere else, but when I was opening up more, I started sharing about that experience and how it touched me and how that had kind of triggered me to look at life a different way and my health a different way. And I got a lot more responses to interviews where I shared that. And so in conversations that happened after this point, I started kind of sharing more and more facts and personal insights about my own life and my own opinions. And as scary as that was, because that's such a scary thing. You're exposing yourself to the world. You're being extremely vulnerable. I was putting myself up for a lot of things. I'm a very, I take hard feedback really well, but if it, sometimes some stuff cuts. And so I was taking a big chance, and I got nothing but just fantastic feedback. People sending me messages of support, emails of thank you for opening up about this. I had the same experience. It took my connection to my audience to a whole other level. And just as a byproduct of that, because I was getting way more fulfillment out of opening up this way on interviews, and I was having so much better conversations too. People were opening up to a whole other degree. But as a byproduct of that, listenership started to spike at a level I hadn't seen before. So from March to April of this year, it increased from month to month by about 40%. I think March was roughly 40,000 listeners. April turned into 69,000. May turned into 101,000, and then June was 125. July ended at 150 something, and we're on track this month to end at 200,000 listeners or more if I can hit my million download challenge. So there's been a huge increase there. I thank my guests too, because I've asked every single one of them to share with their communities and talk about their stories and help me spread their message. So they've all done a really good job of helping me extend their reach and extending my reach in return to help reach new people. And I've asked for this on the show a couple of times when I wrap up at the end of my post roll. I just say outright, I appreciate the iTunes reviews. They're helping me reach new people. It would mean a lot to me if you shared the show with 2 more people, 3 more people, right? Get this message to the people that need to hear it. Right. And my audience has done a fantastic job of that. And so I'm just seeing it start to take off, and I'm really, really I'm still blown away. It still feels surreal when I look at the stats. I don't believe it's happening. It was a weird thing early on to wake up, and I'm sure I know you've experienced this too, John. It's a weird thing to wake up, look at your stats, and realize while I slept, several hundred people heard my voice. They heard a conversation I had. And these days, I wake up and overnight, 10,000, 11,000 people heard the conversation I had yesterday. I have not. That has not sunk in yet. It's a weird thing, but I'm honored to be able to do this.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing feeling, isn't it? Yeah, it's to get that, man. I don't have quite that many numbers, but yeah, you're getting up there, man. That's impressive numbers. So obviously, and to boil down your talk on that topic was that just put out good content, care about your people, be yourself. It's really hard to be yourself in a podcast or on video in particular. It's whoa, people can see you.
Yeah.
it's hard. I know I did this, and I still do this at times and struggle with this. Is you put up a little bit of a different guy kind of guard when you're you're in your live, or when you're performing in front of other people. And I think it's human nature to kind of protect yourself,
Yeah.
but still, the more comfortable you can get with that, and the more you can let that go, it's just like it obviously was huge for your downloads and the people that you're now reaching, and it's still growing because people now know you. They really know you, and that's what people want. People want to. They don't want to work with like a faceless corporation or like a faceless business. They want to work with a person that they like and trust, and that's you now, man. That's awesome, man. I'm really just happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit, because some people are interested about podcasting and how you might monetize that particular business structure. Can you touch on some of the ways you're looking to monetize your very vastly growing audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So to be completely transparent at this point, to date, in almost a year of operating, up until last month, the show didn't make any money. I had a runway of savings that I had built up when I launched this, and thankfully my family was supportive of doing this because they knew how passionate I was about it and just the potential impact that it could have in people's lives. So from launch up until the 6-month point, I didn't think about, plan for, or even I didn't give a thought or consideration to monetizing. My first and foremost goal was to make an impact, to get in front of as many people as possible and help make some real change in people's lives. At the end of the day, when I'm on my deathbed, I'll be more proud of that than at whatever amount of money I ever make. So that was my first focus, and I knew that I would find opportunities, that I would meet awesome people like you who've been very, very smart in the space and have figured out ways to make money doing this to help me and to figure these things out. And so after the 6-month period, I actively worked to surround myself with people who could give me that kind of feedback. So you and I are members of the same podcasting communities and some circles where we mastermind with each other. We have groups of people who collaborate and share real critique and feedback and actionable insights with each other about this worked for me, here's how I'm advertising. And so we do that. And just like in the weight loss world, one of the things that helps people be successful is to be surrounded with people who understand what you're going through and can give you feedback that's actually helpful. It's the same thing for business. And so I've surrounded myself with people like you and other people in the circles that we're in who can give me good feedback. And so I started putting together my strategy for how I was going to approach sponsors. And as you mentioned, the health and fitness space is such a wide market. I mean, it's something that applies universally. I mean, whatever background you're from, whatever country you live in, whatever's going on, wherever you're from, health and fitness in some way impacts your life. So this is a massive market, and advertisers and companies know this. And so a couple of things there is, number one, there's no end to potential advertisers out there. But two, there's also no end to the swindling that happens. And there's a lot of people who take advantage of desperation and of undereducation of people in this particular field or this particular industry to make a quick buck. And so I didn't want to do that. That's one of the things I've been really careful of, keeping bias or agenda or pushing of certain products or methods completely out of the show. I let every guest tell their story. I don't talk about anything that I push as the way or the right pill or the right workout regimen. None of that. Keep it completely objective. And I share what I do personally, but it's not. I'm very upfront in saying it's not what everyone is. What's going to work for everyone, right? It's different by your goals. And the second part of this that's kind of a catch-22 is there are so many companies in the health and fitness world that there's no end to the people who could potentially sponsor Tips of the Scale. But two, I've worked really hard at building up trust with my audience and my credibility, and I hold myself to a level of integrity where I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I took the first advertiser that came up and said, hey, can you pitch these pills, can you pitch these DVDs or whatever it is, because while they would pay the bills and keep the lights on here, I would be betraying my audience. And so I've had to say no to a number of sponsors who approached the show because either I didn't use their product, so I just couldn't honestly say go buy this thing, or two, I knew their product and I didn't agree with what it was or their way of doing business, and so I had to respectfully decline. And so that puts me in a space where I'm unfortunately not making a lot of money, but my integrity and the trust of my audience is intact. And so I've had to work really hard at filtering partnerships, and fortunately I found one. So for the month of July, I was fortunate enough to meet up with this company called Equip Vitamins, and so they're at equipvitamins.com. They're my first sponsor. Very, very generous company. I love what they're doing. So their whole approach is, they come from a pharmaceutical background. That they've actually been in the world of renal pharmaceuticals. So they're helping people on dialysis, people who are in their last like 5-6 years of life in most cases. So these aren't customers they're going to have for the rest of their life. They're doing this for the right reason. They want to help people extend their lives and have the best quality of life while they're surviving. So that's how dialysis works. And so this is the world they come from. So I know their mindset. And when we sat down and talked about their business model, what they're doing is they've researched something called drug-induced nutrient depletion, and it's essentially if you're taking a daily medication for blood pressure, or cholesterol, whatever it is, it works in concert with the nutrients in your body, and if you take it every day, you're going to be deficient in something. And some people, for example, if they take, I think, diabetics medications, they're going to be deficient in like magnesium and calcium and a couple of things like that. And no amount of what you eat on a daily basis is going to make up that gap, right? As much as you eat healthy, if you're taking 10 different pills a day, it's going to deplete all that. And so anyway, I'm going a little long on that, but their whole business model is to look at what you're taking for medication and pair that up with a vitamin to fill in that gap, so that you don't end up with side effects that are going to result in you taking a second medication and then a third medication and so on and so forth. And so really, really smart approach. I completely agree with what they're doing and I love it. And so they partnered up with me because they were taking a chance on me as my first sponsor, and I was taking a chance on them as a brand new company, and we both believed in each other. We actually set up an interesting model, and I don't know if we were going to get into this, John, but in the podcasting world, monetization works on several different models, and one of them is based on how many listeners you have. So at this point, I can guarantee like a certain level of listenership for every episode, and there's a price tag attached to that. And so what we did, because we're coming into this as equal partners, and I believed in their product as well, is I accepted a number lower than that in exchange for a piece of what they're selling. So even though I'm not making as much per episode as I could with another sponsor, I believe so much in their product that for every bottle they sell, there's whatever amount of cents comes to me. And so there's a balance there. It's not something that works for all podcasts, but again, because I completely believed in what they're doing and they took a chance on me, pardon me, it was a partnership that has been working really well. And so they've kept on with the show. They're partnering with us again for August, and they're on the books now again for September. They re-upped for that. So I've been really excited to partner with them, and I'm looking for additional sponsors. And I've talked to quite a few companies, with well-known companies in the supplement space and stuff like that. And the thing is, again, because of the size of this market, John, like they have so many places they could go to spend their advertising dollars. There's also so many people that will be ambassadors for them without them having to pay for it.
Right.
So, for example, there's a lot of people on Instagram who get they get packages of products sent to their house every week or every month in exchange for just that person opening the package and putting that on Instagram or on Twitter and saying, hey, here's hashtag, whatever the tagline is for that product this month. And so that's free marketing. Like the person is getting the product and they're advertising for the company in the same vein. And so those companies, when I come to them and say I can get your product in front of X thousand people every week, they're like, well, that's great, but we have this army of other people who are willing to do it for free. And so that's put me in a weird space too, because these are companies that I believe in and I'd be happy to partner up with, but they already have these thousands of other people out there willing to tweet their products and do their stuff without them having to lay out a cent, other than sending them a couple of things once a month. And so that's put me in a weird place. But I've got a couple of companies that we are talking to, and I've got a couple other plans in the works right now for monetization. But it's a weird thing in sponsorship, at least for the health and fitness space these days.
Yeah, definitely. So that's awesome. So obviously, one of the primary ways you're going to start monetizing this is using the CPM model, and with a little affiliate fee, it looks like, to start monetizing with a good sponsor. And you obviously took your time and wanted to find the right people that were a fit for your audience, which I think whether you're blogging or audio podcasting or putting out video content, if you're going to do sponsors, they are disrupting, and you want to make sure that they are a good fit for your audience. Otherwise, it's, you know, you don't want to be putting out some random thing on your podcast that doesn't relate or doesn't benefit your
Yeah.
audience. Otherwise, it just kind of doesn't sit well with them. But
Yeah.
it sounds like, so that's one way. And then I think you mentioned before the chat today, you were also building a membership site and then doing some public speaking. So there's some indirect ways to monetize a podcast.
Yep.
One of the ways that I do it, biggest way I do it, is consulting. You know, we help, you know, healthcare professionals, you know, create you know, on information products and leverage their expertise so they can create additional income streams and a lifestyle type business. You know, and that's how we monetize. So it's you know, there's lots of ways to indirectly monetize. Do you want to just touch on those other two real briefly before we wrap things up?
Yeah. So the second one you mentioned, and this is probably, you know, I haven't talked about this really, really openly, but I'm launching a community site at Tips of the Scale where, you know, fans of the show who need support and encouragement and people to talk to about their weight loss journey can kind of get together and talk to other listeners of the show. And, you know, I've alluded to the membership groups that you and I are a part of and the power of them, because in the world of weight loss, one of the things that holds people back is they don't have support. They don't have that encouraging environment of people who are their champions and people who are backing them up. You know, the person who really needs to lose 50 pounds or 100 pounds isn't there by choice in a lot of cases. There's an argument for that, but they have the cards stacked against them in a lot of times, and that means at their office, people are bringing in donuts every day. People are bringing in cake every day. That means that they're working long hours and they don't have time to cook or they don't know how to cook. And so when you surround them with other people who can give them feedback and give them advice, it really, really helps them. They have that encouragement. They have people who are not going to judge them when they have a misstep or they have, you know, a quote-unquote relapse and have a bad weekend or whatever. So this community is going to be set up to do basically group coaching over Skype. We're going to have, you know, 6-7 people per group with similar circumstances and backgrounds. So I'm working really hard to pair up people who are like parents will be in groups with other parents, and people who work night shifts will be in groups with other people in night shifts. That way everyone is on common ground. They kind of understand the challenges that each other are working with, and that it'll be that kind of you know, going around the table support. You know, what did you deal with this week? How can we help you and support you? And depending on the level of membership that they choose, they'll also get some time with me every month. So I'll be popping into these group sessions in some cases once a month, in some cases once a week, and really, really pushing them and challenge them and saying, okay, this is, you know, my contribution today. What are you going to do between now and the next time that you meet? That's a stretch for you. How can we help hold you accountable to that? What do you need from us? What apps would help you? How can we, you know, what resources do you need from everyone around you? And so that's a really powerful thing that I've seen helped me for my own weight loss and for building this business, is having that group of people who can help me. So I'm doing that for my community. And as you mentioned, also public speaking is the next one. I have, as part of those offline conversations I had here in Dallas, where I was having those one-on-one talks with people about their weight loss, I formed a meetup group here in Dallas, and it's a weight loss support group. And it's, you know, it's essentially the same thing as I was talking about with the online communities, but it's something I do offline. It helps keep me sharp. It helps keep me in front of people where I'm asking the right questions and getting like one-on-one face-to-face feedback. But it's also helped me form an outline for a full day's seminar that I am going to go around the country presenting to people who've been really struggling with this. And so I know that podcasting is a relatively new medium, and a lot of people just aren't savvy to it yet. So I think I can reach them by going out, you know, city to city and making my presence known through newspapers, radio advertising, and other methods that aren't new media. You know, so if I can't get in front of them with the podcast, I will reach them some other way. And so that's my goal with the public speaking, is to get out to their cities.
Yeah, go out there and get them. You know, that's it, man. So awesome, Sam. Well, hey, thank you so much for sharing your journey. I think we got a lot of great content. Literally, I know this was a content discussion in a lot of ways. So as we wrap things up, just go ahead and give our viewers one more piece of advice, maybe a thing that really sticks in your heart that they could take and go take action with, and then we'll say goodbye.
I think the biggest lesson I've learned in my weight loss journey, my business journey, just in life, is that you need help. Like we all have each other to lean on, and you don't get what you don't ask for. So if you need help losing weight, if you need help launching your business, if you need help fixing your business, Whatever it is, reach out, find the people who are going to support you, encourage you, give you the feedback that you need, who aren't just going to sugarcoat stuff and tell you what they think you need to hear. People who are really concerned for your progress and who are going to help you hold yourself accountable and get to the next level, and ask them for that. Because again, you're not going to get what you don't ask for. So go out there and grab it, pull it, find the people who are going to help you do it. That's how you get to the next level. Thank
Absolutely, you. Yeah. Invest in yourself, right? And that's the fastest way to do it, is to find mentors, go to mastermind groups. Just like we're going to be in Dallas this weekend, right in your backyard. We're going to be networking and meeting great people who are doing inspiring things, and that's the fastest way to accelerate your growth. So invest in yourself, and things will start to grow. So go ahead and just share, Sam, where our viewers can find out more about you.
Absolutely. So my headquarters online is at tipsofthescale.com. You'll find us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Pinterest, on G+, on every place on social media that you can. The show is in the health and fitness category of iTunes. If you go to tipsofthescale.com/iTunes, you'll be taken straight to our page on iTunes where you can subscribe. And I would love your feedback. If you're brand new to the show, tell me what you like, tell me what I can do different, and what you enjoy. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sam. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing with us today. So I hope you all enjoyed that discussion. A lot of great content literally within that talk. If you are listening to this on iTunes or Stitcher, go over to newwavehealthcare.com/interviews/Sam, and his show notes page will be right there. Or you just go to newwavehealthcare.com, type Sam into the search bar, and his show notes page will pop right up when you do that. So a lot of great content. Again, like you say, reach out to those people before you start a project. Whoever your target market is, figure out who that is. Go out there, survey them, interview them, learn their struggles, create your content from that, and then start putting out consistent content over time that involves your authentic self, which is a bit scary in the beginning, but it does help. And the main goal in marketing or in whatever is to get people to know, like, and trust you and be yourself, and that's how you'll get people to follow you, just like Sam has done, and why his show is just blowing up right now. So I hope you all enjoyed that discussion, and I will see you on the next one.